This is my presentation on exchange rates. So let's talk about what is an exchange rate. An exchange rate is the price at which one currency can be exchanged for another, and it shows how much of one currency you need to buy a unit of another currency, which is critical for international trade, travel, and investment. Next, we've got the two different types of exchange rate systems. So we have the floating rate, and a floating rate is actually a rate that's determined by market forces such as supply and demand in the foreign exchange market. And most major currencies like America, Europe, and Japan, they actually use this system. Next, we have a floating rate and a fixed rate, and a fixed rate for the currency means stability. Um, and market forces establish exchange rate for a currency based on its supply and demand. So those are the differences, and they are actually determined by the supply and demand in a country. Let's talk about the fluctuations on the economy. So the biggest three indicators that we can see of the fluctuations are inflation, interest rates, and economic growth. And I actually have a quote here from Investopedia, and it says currency depreciation can boost economic growth by making a country's exports more competitive abroad, increasing demand for domestic goods. But if inflation and high interest rates follow, it could possibly slow down economic growth. So we can really see how exchange rate fluctuations significantly influence an economy's macroeconomic indicators, and a depreciation of these domestic currency makes imports more expensive. Let's talk about the balance of trade. So, with this, fluctuations and the balance, they significantly influence a country's trade. The difference between the value and its exports and imports. So, you've got currency depreciation, and this is a country's currency. When it depreciates, its exports become more affordable. And next, you have the appreciation, and this the liquidity, which actually is easy access to funds, and you have growth potential, which is a higher return. So because of the exchange rate changes, they significantly impact a country's balance of trade by influencing the relative prices of exports and imports. And a stronger currency can make a country's exports more expensive and imports cheaper. Next, we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of the fixed versus floating. So for the advantages, you've got some good ones. So this is actually pretty amazing. So you get the disadvantages first for the fixed exchange rate is limited flexibility. So this means maintaining a fixed rate often requires aligning domestic interest rates with those of an anchor currency. And then we also have large reserves. The advantages are reduced inflation. For the floating exchange, I think you get a little bit more here. The advantages are flexibility and adjustment, which means that the rates allow for automatic adjustments to to balance out the imbalance of payments and trade. Also, you get policy autonomy, which provides central banks with more flexibility to adjust monetary policies, which I think is pretty necessary. The disadvantages, there's uncertainty and there's currency risk. And later on in this presentation, we're going to see how those disadvantages have really affected a country. And we have countries with these policies next. So these countries' exchange rate policies offer stability and predictability in their trade conditions. So three examples of this: one is Hong Kong, Denmark, and Egypt. And each three of these have a different effect because of their exchange rates. For Egypt, I think it was the most profound one, and it says the Egyptian pound lost a lot of value quickly, leading to high inflation and higher living costs for people, although it helped stabilize the economy long term. All right, next we're going to talk about the global economic diversities. So it really did impact the standards of living. So exchange rates play a crucial role in shaping economic diversity and living standards globally. Stable and competitive exchange rates can enhance trade, attract investment, control inflation, and provide a more accurate comparison of living standards across the nation. So, specifically, I have a quote here from Investopedia, and it says, Foreign buyers have pushed up housing prices in nations with a weak currency. Imagine you are house hunting and suddenly you are bidding against people who are getting, say, an automatic 30% discount on the asking price. So, this you can see has a big impact, the exchange rates, on the standards of living. Next, let's talk about the cost of living. And the economic well-being. So, the different countries that have seen this are Argentina, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria. And actually, I have a price comparison of them to the U.S. dollar. And I think the biggest one that was most surprising was Argentina. And it says in recent years, Argentina has faced significant currency depreciation, leading to soaring inflation. For instance, in 2022, the Argentinian peso value halved against the US dollar. So I think that's pretty significant of an exchange rate. Next, let's talk about the unemployment and inflation. So unemployment is going to go up, and basically, um, an exchange rate fluctuation can significantly influence the inflation and unemployment across different regions. And then these are actually some real world examples illustrating the impacts. So inflation, you've got a stronger domestic currency, and it can make a country's exports less competitive in international markets. And these are the different examples of it. So we've got Japan, we've got South Africa, and Nigeria, and you can see that there is a huge impact. Just wanted to point out one in South Africa. A study investigating the effects of exchange rate on employment growth in South Africa's manufacturing sector found the real exchange rate vitality as a significant contractuary effect. So this really does have a huge effect on the government. So just in summary and in conclusion, there are different types of exchanges. There's the floating rate, there's the fixed rate. We also have exchange rates effects on the economy. We see that it's rising inflation, interest rates, and it really affects the cost of living. So I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you so much.